person since, pardon me, I choked on a laugh there. Since it's damn lonely to do a class by yourself. All right. Now we're all set up. Ugh. And I'm going to go to share screen, and that's the one I want to share. Somebody seems to have figured out you can attend by Zoom. All right, so first let's do a roll call. Okay, Tyler Ned City, James Linden, Michelle Miller.
Here.
Yay.
Yay.
And Vincenti Rebecca.
Yay.
Okay. And well, damn it, I'll hand these out at the end so I don't have to put my mask on right now. I've got my little sneeze-proof wind vents
Oh, yeah.
all set up now. All right, so we were talking about what are criteria for deciding on projects before. And when we're talking about non-financial strategic criteria, one of them that I've already emphasized is capturing a larger market share. If we are selling products or services to customers, it's rare to find the business that says, no, we're okay, we just want to stay here at this level. No, there's always an idea that we can expand. Even here at school, one of our big pushes is to expand enrollment, which in essence is the same thing, capturing a larger market share. We might do a project to make it difficult for our competitors to enter the market. Now, it's a bit well, it's not unethical, but it is a bit on the downside to do this. To me, it is unethical when you go to the legislature and get law made so that only you can compete in a certain area. But that is not an unknown business practice. Sometimes we want to develop what they're calling an enabler product. In other words, this would be like a starter kit kind of idea that we're putting together a product, and the idea is the customer will love this product so much they'll say, oh, well, wait, I want to go up to the next model, and so on. For example, all these smartphone manufacturers do exactly this. They'll have a somewhat cheap product you start using that and then you go, oh man, I wish it had this much more storage for music, or I could do better email, or some other aspect of it that would cause them to say, well, instead of using the 9.1, you could go to the 10 that would do all of these things. Sometimes what we're doing is we're just positioning ourselves to for the future by building up our technology base. And that's something that we always need to keep in mind. What is the future going to look like? So far, we still haven't got flying cars, but from where we are in any product, you could see an idea coming that would be a better or at least flashier product, right? The idea I think of is the cell phone with holographic technology. What if you could have a cell phone that you're holding and you could see the image of a product or a person you're talking to? I think that'd be kind of cool.
Like Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, another reason we might do a project is to reduce dependency on unreliable suppliers. Sometimes you have been outsourcing some part of your production and you just can't rely on these guys to get you what you need on time. Ma'am, should I assume you're Thailand and
Yes,
City?
yeah.
So in that case, we often want to say, you know what, let's take that in-house, we'll build it, we won't have to worry about these guys. In fact, some friends of mine own a factory that makes office chairs. And the little spider, the thing underneath where you reach down and you fool with the controls, they said, we outsourced that to a guy in Canada. And they took me around to their storage. My God, they got giant masses of these spiders in there. And I said, what's up with that? They said, well, he's not very reliable. I suggested that they do a project to bring it in-house, but they're kind of like, no, we don't want to do that. Oh, all right, whatever, man. And also there's to prevent government intervention or regulation. If there are no regulations now on certain activities, we might want to keep it that way. Because whenever the government gets involved with something, we can be sure of one thing: they are gonna screw it up. Right? So a lot of times, like the OSHA inspector comes around, he's kind of looking askance at some of our operations. We just say, you know what? Let's just put some more safety measures in place so that these guys don't start thinking about regulations. We might need to restore our corporate image or make our brand recognizable. Of course, for Rebecca and I, that's not the first time we heard that today. But, for example, things happen. Sometimes things beyond our control. I don't know if any of y'all are old enough to remember in the 70s when some guy pulled a bottle of Tylenol off a drugstore shelf, took it home, made pills that looked like the Tylenol but were poison, and then he snuck it back on the shelf of the drugstore. And he may have done that to a couple of bottles, I don't remember. But instantly, they tied the poisoning to Tylenol. And Tylenol's like, hey, we're not making poison. We don't want our customers to die. And they went on a huge campaign. They said, pull Tylenol off all the drugstore shelves, all the grocery store shelves. We're going to throw that all away. And Tylenol went on this big campaign on TV about, we make safe medicine. We are worried about you. So we made sure that we pulled all this medicine in case there's a problem. We've been checking our facilities. We've been doing this and that to make sure it's safe. Actually, that's where the little safety caps, when you take the lid off and there's like a paper thing glued on it, that's where that all started, was when Tylenol had this problem.
So I wonder if that was the first of its kind, because when I buy stuff like that, I make sure that there's a cap that hasn't been, like the seal cap hasn't been broken. Because sometimes you're like, okay, like for example, I think it was last year or 2 years ago that these kids were actually opening up ice cream and licking it and then putting the lid back on and putting it back in the freezer. I thought that was disgusting. I was like, that's gross.
Yes, I've seen a couple of videos, and even people who said, I hope they get COVID, and stuff like this. I mean, what the hell? But some people, I don't know if it's extra low esteem or exactly what, but they're willing to go out of their way to make it possible that you will have a problem. I have no excuse ready for this. Some projects we're going to do to show that as a company or a corporation, we're supporting the local community, right? And certain certain companies show more of a commitment than others. For example, Toyota, when they were looking around for a new place to put a plant, they settled on a town called Georgetown, Kentucky. But they said, you know what, there's one thing that they don't have here, and that is a good school system. But what we're going to do is we're going to work with them to make a better school system here. Right, but there's all kinds of places where, all kinds of corporations that do good work to make sure their corporate image looks good. And I hope they have a sincere commitment to helping the people who are potentially their customers. Ronald McDonald House, for example, gives people a place to stay while they're having to be away from home in a big city, getting medical treatments. Even that horrible, horrible place, Malwart, pretends that they care about the citizens. All right, so when we talk about our multi-criteria selection models, what we do there is, one of the ways is we have a checklist model. In a checklist model, we've got a list of questions where we review our projects, and if they meet some amount or all of the criteria, we say, yeah, that's a good project. Now, this doesn't address what is the relative importance or the value that we might get out of a project. Right? It just says things like, well, will it make our brand look better? Okay, we can check that. Do we think we're going to make money? Yes, we can check that, and on down. But obviously, a lot of times we want to think in terms of more of the multi-weighted scoring model, where we may use exactly the same criteria or questions, but we weigh them, right? We say, well, we want to look like, or we want to even be good corporate citizens, but not so much that we lose money. So we'll score that at a 0.05. Right? We want to make money. Oh, we really want to make money. We're going to score that at 0.25. So we weigh all of our criteria there as far as how much should they influence the decision to do the project or not. This allows a better comparison against other projects. If we just use a checklist, we may have a whole bunch of projects that meet all the checklist criteria, right? But then we say, all right, but how do we decide which of these is better or the best? Makes it very difficult. When we use a multi-weighted scoring model, that simplifies how we choose what project we want to do. All right, so so here we have some selection questions that are used in actual practice in the world, right? So usually there's some topic that they're drawn from, and then the question itself. So the strategy, alignment to our strategy, they ask, what specific strategy does this project align with? Right? We don't want a vague question like, does this satisfy our strategy generally? No, we want to know where it's lining up. The driver, what is the business problem the project solves? Lots of projects get started and even finished that really don't matter in the larger scheme of things. Success metrics. How will we measure success? Will it be by increased sales, increased brand visibility, uh, will we be breaking technological barriers? Exactly how are we gonna measure our success? The sponsorship, who is gonna be the project sponsor? Usually in business and industry, every project has a sponsor. Sometimes they call them a champion. And that's somebody that carries enough weight at the upper management level that if there's a problem, the project manager can go to them and say, look, I cannot get any help from the marketing department, and we really need that. And of course, then they'll go and they'll use their influence to make that happen. You'll notice risk has several questions. What is the impact of not doing this project? Okay, so there can be risk from not doing projects as well as doing them. What is the project risk to our organization? Right? Is this a huge project where the corporation is going to dump in a lot of money and it may or may not work, and if it doesn't work, the whole company's going to go south? Where does the proposed project fit in our risk profile? Right? Is this like such an innovative new product that we're really taking a chance that the consumer is going to want it? Or is this just kind of an extension of something we've been doing for years? It's selling really good even though it's an older product, and this is just going to be an update? Benefits, value, ROI. What is the value of this project to the organization? Right? Sooner or later, it comes down to money. That the company must make money to stay in business. This is true even if it's a nonprofit. NTU can't operate for a minute without money. Even though we're not here to make a profit as such, right? We're here for what's considered a nobler purpose, to educate people. When will the project show results? Again, goes back to that payback idea. Is everything going to be paid off in 9 months and from there on it's clear sailing? Is it going to be paid back in 10 years and the company might have a considerable amount of problems in the meantime because of the cash flow that has to go to this project? And our objectives. What are our project objectives? Are they noble objectives that we're going to make medicines that are better and cheaper than the ones currently on the market? Or is this a vanity project to make the CEO look good and let him buy more company stock? Oh, bloody hell. This is a long section. All right, we have to think about our organization culture. Is our culture right for this type of project? Right? And often you see a thing where a company actually will split off something like Microsoft doesn't make vaccines. The Gates Foundation, Bill Gates kind of setup. They make vaccines. Ford is a better example. Ford makes vehicles, right? And they've made a lot of money over many years making vehicles, right? But they don't really do philanthropy there. They split off the Ford Foundation that does philanthropy, right? So our culture in our organization may not be right for a certain type of project just because it's wildly not what we do. All right, resources. Will internal resources be available for the project? It's always possible to get external resources for a project, but that's going to cost a lot more money than if we can use the ones that we already have. What is our approach to this? Are we going to build this, or are we going to buy the parts and just do the final assembly and call it a day? Schedule, always an extremely important aspect of a project. The first question, how long will this project take? Companies are usually extremely reluctant to take on projects that will take many years. The possible exception to that is building a nuclear power plant. That's a 10-year commitment there, easy. And one of the reasons that it wasn't until very recently that they started building a new nuclear power plant, even though some of the old ones are extremely dangerous now. But let's not talk about that. Is the timeline realistic? Well, depending on how long we have, it may or may not be realistic. When President Kennedy said, let's make it our goal to put a man on the moon in this decade, he was speaking in 1961, I believe, and sure enough, 8 years later, Neil Armstrong jumped down onto the surface of the moon. But if he had said, let's do it this year, I think that would have been doomed to failure. There are training resources. Will staff training be required? Sometimes we have to train members of the staff or even acquire members for the staff that have abilities we don't really have in the company now. Our finance and portfolio, what is the estimated cost of the project? If we have $3 million in our project budget and you're proposing a project that costs $5 million, I'm guessing we're not doing that project. Again, on our portfolio, is this a new initiative or part of an existing initiative? Does this project further something we've already been doing? Or is this project something brand new? We haven't done this before. Maybe we've done something a little bit like it, but. And how does this project interact with our other current projects? Right? If we are a manufacturer of electronic products and somebody suggests we start making wooden furniture and setting up IKEA type stores, you've got to question whether that's really a good move. And then, of course, our technology. is this technology available? Is this new technology? Are we gonna have to invent the technology that makes this happen? All right, on the other hand, using our weighted matrix type of project screening, we do that in a way that we're not just asking the questions, we're rating how much it fits into each of our criteria categories. So you can see here, the criteria are stay within our competencies. In other words, we're not going to do something that we haven't done before or that makes us stretch a lot. Maybe it's a little bit different than what we do now. Is it a good strategic fit? Is it urgent, or can this wait? Are we going to get 25% of our sales from the new products that we're talking about? Will we reduce our defects to less than 1%? So quality is always a consideration. Is it going to improve customer loyalty? Has it got a return on investment of at least 18%? Right? Again, we always need to make money. All right, so each of those have been weighted here, right? So they're saying stay within core competencies, we'll give that a 2.0. Strategic fit, we'll give that a 3.0. Urgency, 2.0. 25% of sales from new products, that's a 2.5. Reduced defects, well, that's a 1.0, where we've got pretty good quality now. Or maybe we don't care. We just want to sell a lot. Improve customer loyalty, another 1.0. And ROI of 18% plus at 3.0. Now, in engineering economy, when we're figuring out the financials for a project, we usually use the ROI as an absolute go, no go decision. But here they do it a little softer, that it's got a high weight, but it's not, nothing is going to be rejected for that. All right, so we've got project 1, project 2, project 3, project 4, project 5, 6, all the way up to project N. And each of those has been kind of graded within these criteria, right? So project 1 has a 1 on stay within core competencies. So 1 times 2 plus, it's got an 8 on strategic fit. So 8 times 3, 24, added to the 2 we already had is 26. Urgency is only a 2, 2 times 2 is 4, that brings us up to 30. 25% of sales is rated as a 6 times it's 2.5. That would be 15, so 45. Reduced defects is a 0. Well, they get nothing for that. Improve customer loyalty, 6 times 1. So that brings us up to 51. And then ROI of 18% plus, that's a 5 times 3. That's another 15, bringing us up to our gigantic 66 points. All right, so you can look and you can see, all right, we got 66, 27, 56, 32, 102, 55, 83. How do we decide? Okay, I can wait another 30 minutes for y'all to answer. Of course
How do we decide to go with the project?
yeah,
The scoring points. Like
Exactly.
If it's high, we're gonna do it. If it's low, then not really.
exactly. So we've got one project here rated at 102. And for the purposes of argument, we'll say that's the highest rated project. We're gonna do that project unless it has some other problem that we can't overcome. We don't have enough money to do it, or the technology isn't in place, but 102 is looking pretty good compared to all these others. Right, the next best one, of course, is Project N, coming in at 83, but since 25% of sales scores at 0, we still might be a little wary of doing that one. Kind of depends on how sales-driven our projects need to be at this time. All right, so you can see it's a fairly easy way of being able to decide what's a good project, what's not a good project. We actually use this kind of matrix for decisions in other areas in engineering. All right. So how do we apply our selection model to our projects? Well, first of all, by the project classification. How well does it fit into our organization's strategy? That is going to be a big thing. We don't necessarily want to go and all of a sudden we say, hey, we're gonna get into the space business, right? And somebody comes up and says, we've been making plastic toys for 50 years. Although you do sometimes get these strange crossovers. For example, during the Vietnam War, Armalite Rifles approached Mattel about making the plastic stocks for M16s.
Really? And did it happen?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, look, think about it. That was something that fit right in with what they're already doing. They're making plastic molded parts already. They've got expertise in that area.
They got all the equipment.
Exactly. Why not? The only thing they had to make that they didn't already have was new molds for those. And toy companies notoriously have a problem. One of my professors worked for Mattel, and he said their problem was all the sales are pretty much at Christmas time. So all year long, they're building toys and sticking them in the warehouse, waiting for Christmas.
Kind of like a Santa's shop.
In a way, yes.
Wow.
Right? So something that's going to be consistent through the year, oh yeah, you bet they'd jump on that. All right, so selecting our model, often we're going to go ahead and apply the weighted scoring model. That gives us ways that we can align with our strategic goals in a way where we actually have less squishiness, right? If we use the checklist model, it still leaves a lot of unknowns out there. But if we use the weighted scoring model, that then gives us a kind of pseudo-scientific way of doing it. I say pseudo-scientific because how do we decide how much quality is worth on a project? How much the ROI is worth? Using a weighted scoring model kind of thing helps us reduce the number of wasteful projects. We're still going to end up doing projects that make little or no money, usually because they're compliance type projects, right? The EPA shows up on our doorstep and they say, if you guys don't reduce the amount of dust you're putting in the air, we're going to start fining you out the wazoo. And believe me, that is the most painful way to be fined, is out the wazoo.
So when that happens, do you just halt what you're making? Or do you just slow down the production so not so much dust will be in the air?
Well-
Not enough to get fined.
Usually what I would do is I would do a project to reduce the amount of dust being put out. You know that in the Navajo, they have been closing down the coal plants. What a stupid idea. These coal plants burn so clean that that they are hardly polluting at all. So we're closing our coal plants, and at the same time, we're going to sell our coal to China and India, who are opening 3,000 coal plants to make electricity that are going to have no pollution controls whatsoever. Who made that calculation?
Oh my goodness, that's horrible.
Okay, so we want to identify that we have proper goals for our projects. And we want everybody to understand why the project is selected. There's nothing more discouraging than most of us can see a project that needs to be done really badly, but instead we're doing the boss's pet project over here that is going to change almost nothing. All right. When we think of projects, we do project proposals for each project, right? And that project proposal will usually will have some kind of a form that we use, and it will ask you to outline the advantages in a lot of the all or most of the areas we've talked about: strategic alignment, improvement of quality, cost of the project, ROI, etc. So where do we get those? Well, one of the best places is in our organization. One some industries are very knee-jerk about projects. And I'll give you an example is Hollywood, right? Let one movie studio let it out that they're thinking about doing a movie with killer apes, and all of a sudden, every movie studio is working on a project like that. Sometimes it's a request for proposal or an RFP from another company. Maybe we own a company that does, we're working in a company that does nothing but build projects for other people, right? A lot of architectural and building firms are exactly like that, right? They don't work if somebody doesn't want a building or a bridge or a dam built. Damn dams. Right, so a lot of times there are companies, even huge companies, that survive entirely off bidding on projects that other people want done. All right, so now the thing is, the number of projects we may have, and usually any company has ready to go at any given time, is more than we can do. In fact, you worry if the company doesn't have more projects than they can do, or you should worry, right? So we have to prioritize those. What is the best project or the best set of projects that we can do, right? Well, to do that, we might use our multi-weighted scoring model and have the projects ranked by that. But that means we've got to have discipline, accountability, responsibility, right? Because if to make a different project win, you only have to change the weight of each criteria. So a lot of people will fool around with the data till the project they want is chosen. So we've got to have constraints on how this is done. It reduces our flexibility a little bit, and it does mean that now, hopefully, organization politics don't decide what projects are done and what aren't. All right, so when we're managing our portfolio of projects, well, first of all, senior management is going to have input. Something that I always used to tell my subordinates when I was managing at Texas A&M is, you gotta treat the boss like they're a dummy. You know everything about the project you're working on, and they only know kind of the very high level, right? So you got to explain it in terms where you both know what it means, and start from there. Right? So when we go to the senior management to talk about our projects, we don't start with the super high technology that we think we can invent. No, we start with, we think that we can really help people and help the company by doing this project. We still have to develop part of the technology and blah, 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 blah. Right? You have to lead the horse to water and pray that he drinks. Or, in the case of Navajo, the sheep. All right, so the project office, the project manager and his staff in the project office, and depending on the size of our company, the whole project office may be the project manager and an administrative assistant type person, right? Or it might be a really big thing where, you know, you've got a pretty large team there. All right, so here's a project proposal form, and it is filled out for a automatic vehicular tracking public transportation project. All right, so this might be in response to an RFP from a municipality, or it might be internal to the city, that they're saying, you know what, we really need this so that we're a city people recognize as being advanced and exciting. Although that can lead you into a trap. For example, Las Vegas, they just built Raiders Stadium to get the Raiders to move from Oakland to there. Now we've got the COVID, they can't play any games there at all. The people who pushed this project are crapping bricks. All right, so when we have this kind of form, we date it, we say what proposal it is, who's the sponsor, what's its classification, is it strategic infrastructure compliance, what business problem does it solve, how does it align with the organization's strategy, what are the major deliverables of the project, what is the impact of not doing it. So you can see it's answering a lot of the questions we were talking about before. What are the three major risks for this project? How will we measure success? Will the project require internal resources? Are they available? What's the estimated cost? How long will it take? And then the oversight action is, yes, we accept the project, or we return it for either more thought, or with a big old thing that says, what are you kidding?
Reject it, reject it, reject it.
But a project proposal form can be something like this, where it's very simple, you just answer a few questions. Can we help you, sir?
I was looking for an instructor for a rag
Rags, you're gonna have to contact him through email.
Okay.
He's such a coward, he wouldn't come in. He's afraid of getting COVID.
I have also a question. Does he ever like come in days?
He does occasionally come in, but he doesn't tell me his schedule.
And do you know where his office may be located, or is?
His office is right there behind you.
Okay. Alright. Thank
Uh, Thank God he asked questions I could answer.
So going back to the project with the Raiders being relocated, and you're saying that the people that did the project are like in a hot mess now. What's the next step? Like what happens to that project or to the people that okay, we're gonna do this, and now because of something unforeseeable happened, what happens to the project?
That's an excellent question. And, it depends. First of all, it's gonna depend on the culture of the company. Some companies punish failure, right? So if it's that kind of a company, they might fire everybody who ever even thought of being on that project. Some companies, like Toyota, will celebrate failure if it was sincerely an effort to do something good. Right? Because, look, not every project is going to be successful. I've had a few I hate thinking about. You know, where we kind of pulled it off, but it's one of those things where you're like, oh, bloody hell. But in the best kind of company, they're going to look and they're going to take the lessons. Why did this fail? Well, did it fail because the technology isn't really there to do this? We thought we could invent it. Did it fail because we really weren't paying attention, that it was a stupid idea in the first place? You know, and that's always the best. That goes with our Dene philosophy of education. We reflect on what we've done. We think and plan ahead of time. We implement, and then we reflect. Did this come out exactly the way we wanted it to do? In a good way? Did it come out acceptably, but we're not really happy with it? Is it an absolute disaster? That should be part of any thinking person's process. Unfortunately, we don't always have as many thinking people as I would like. All right, so you saw that project proposal form. Sometimes we'll do a fancier type where you kind of answer all those questions, but you do it in a narrative form. You know, this proposal for a project will make the company better, food will taste better to us, everybody on earth will sing Kumbaya and link arms. Okay, sometimes you really got to sell these projects. All right, now another thing that we need to think about always is the risk. And when we categorize risk, we do it by the probability something will happen and the impact if it does happen. All right, so this is a brief risk assessment, and believe me, we're going to talk about risk until you're like, oh my God, let's stop talking about risk. So what are the four major risks? The government incentives are curtailed. All right, that makes a big difference. One of the things that has pushed a lot of people into getting solar power on their houses is government subsidies, and also for building the big solar farms and for building the big wind farms, right? The government gives tax breaks or direct money to people for doing this, and that makes it more attractive. That way your ROI is going way up. Land use injunction. Okay, so we're gonna do something on a piece of land, and we're afraid we're gonna get all the usual protesters out there with their NIMBY signs, not in my backyard. Right, and this happens a lot. In fact, it happens so often that companies won't take a lot of risks in certain places, like the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, all super liberal states, and so people are very wary of huge projects because they're afraid they'll get shut down all the time from people who are worried about ecology or ruining neighborhoods or whatever, shutting down the project. Energy price decrease. This is for a wind farm, right? So if the price of energy goes too low, wind won't pay for itself. When I was a mere whippersnapper in engineering school, wind and solar were considered to be things that you did in places where it was almost impossible to get power to, because they were so expensive compared to just having an electric power line run out to your facility. Now, with advances in technology, with government subsidies, they're very attractive. And a new import tax. All right, so I assume that means they're bringing in the blades or the generators from another country, and if an import tax is added on, that changes our calculation of profit and ROI. All right, so like I said, they made a little risk matrix here that they're calling a risk intensity rating, right? If the government incentives are curtailed, well, the probability of that is high in their estimate, and the impact would be high. Land use injunction, they're saying it's medium. Maybe they're gonna build this in a place where they don't have quite so many echo nuts around. I just say that because, look, I totally want to preserve the environment. I want the earth to be better when we hand it off to our descendants than it was when we inherited it. But sometimes these guys go so far in their extremity that you're like, this is just not reasonable. You know, you're saying that we can't have this power for people to be able to live so that 50 tortoises can live on this land. I don't know, maybe it depends on how you feel about tortoise. Let's see, okay. Energy price decrease, that they've got it rated as a medium probability here. And that would have a medium impact. Energy prices are gonna fluctuate. Right now, we've got relatively low prices. When I first moved to New Mexico, I was paying like over $3 a gallon. Now I'm paying under $2 a gallon. And I've got a very fuel efficient car anyway, so that's not too So even if the price decreased, we might say, you know what? It's gonna go back up after a while. Let's just build it. And we will make money. New import tax, they're rating the probability as low, but the impact would be high. If we have a situation like Trump putting tariffs on Chinese goods, then our project is going to have a problem, right? Because it happens that we're buying the blades from China. All right, so they've got some other risk factors here that they consider to just be ordinary risk factors in every project. How about complexity? Well, they say, well, it's average. People have been building wind farms a long time. We know how to do that. Resource skills, well, we've got good resource skills. Our guys have built wind farms before. We're not going to do anything new and groundbreaking. The technology is an average risk because it's a well-known technology. It's been going for a long time. In fact, you could say wind technology is one of the oldest power technologies known. All right. So when we think about senior management input, well, they're going to give us guidance on our selection criteria, making sure that they're aligned with our organization's strategy and goals. They may have to get involved in deciding how we balance the use of our available resources among our current projects. Right, a project with a really low priority might do a lot of stopping and starting because projects with higher priority need to use the resources, whether those resources are people, equipment, lab facilities, production facilities, whatever. So the governance team, our guys in the project office, first of all, publish the priority of our projects. There's no point in keeping everything a secret. In fact, it works against you. But of course, none of us know any organizations like that anywhere near here. We want to ensure our project selection process is transparent and that we don't allow people to put their thumb on the scale, so to speak, and push the projects one way or the other. We may have to reassess the organization's goals and priorities. That is going to be like a senior management. I think when they say governance team, they may be talking actually about the very, very top level of management, the kind of CEO, CFO, CIO, EIEIO level. And we want to evaluate the progress of the projects. How many projects are behind on schedule? How many have spent more money than they're scheduled to have spent by now? These are all aspects that we have to consider carefully. All right, so we've got this kind of complicated flow chart to talk about how do we screen our projects. First of all, in the beginning, there was the proposal idea, right? That's gonna come in here, and we're gonna have input from whether it's a strategic fit or good for the ROI, goes into a data collection. Then we're gonna go through the evaluation of projects by criteria, where we either say, you know what, this is a silly project, we're not gonna do it, we're gonna abandon the idea, or we say we're gonna pursue it. Then our priority team is gonna look at the proposal, they're gonna look at our portfolio of projects and make sure that we're balancing the risk of all the projects. So from time to time, we're gonna keep looking back and forth at what are our priorities, or we may return the project and say, you know what, we need more information about how this works. We're just not seeing it now. We think it might be a good project, but we want more information. All right, so here at this level, we can also reject a project. You know what, it looks pretty good up here, but down here, not so much. If we accept it, it may have to wait until we have the correct resources. Or we may assign it a priority, assign it resources, get a project manager, and keep looking at the progress of the project. Now, of course, it depends. This is kind of an idealized version of what happens when we select a project. Because sometimes, even if we abandon it or reject it, it may come back around because our biggest customer wants something like this to happen. Or the CEO says, well, wait a minute, that could be a good project if we did this, that, and the other with it. All right, so we look at our projects and we have a priority analysis. So we have a bunch of projects. Here they're saying we have up to 29 projects. This is the kind of thing you would do on an Excel sheet, so that spreadsheet, so that you aren't constrained by just having pieces of paper and then, oh, we got another project, we got to glue on another strip of paper. Of course, people hardly do things manually anymore. Makes me a little sad sometimes. On the other hand, computers are so nice to have. Anyway, so we have must objectives, must meet if impacts, right? And, oh, bloody hell, I don't really want to read this to you, especially with 5 minutes to go. But this is figure 2.6 in your book, according to my slideshow, which could be different in this new edition. You'll notice I still haven't been able to get McGraw-Hill to unbelt with the new slideshow yet.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's still 2.6, it's on page 48, right? Go through that, make sure you feel like you understand that, and feel free to ask questions next time. All right. So we have must objectives, in other words, things that any of our projects has to have that. Just absolutely. Then we have want objectives. Well, it would be nice if it did this kind of thing. All right, give me a second here. Oh, thank dog I'm on the second to last slide. I thought this chapter would never end. All right. So, when we think about projects, we have what we call the bread and butter projects. In other words, all we're going to do is improve a current product or service so that we can continue to sell that. Right? So, at this point, unless there is a big jump in technology, and I have no doubt that there will be, making cell phones, they're just going to keep doing it as bread and butter projects, right? Apple's going to make a big deal when they come out with a new iPhone, but it's not actually going to be that different from what they're selling now, right? So, then there's kind of the Pearl projects. These are chances that we might revolutionize our industry or some industry because we have figured out a technical, a new technological adaptation that no one has found yet, and we're going to be years ahead of our competitors if we bring this out. Oysters, I'm not sure I like the pearls, oysters split here, but okay, whatever, man. They're defining that as technological breakthroughs with high commercial payoffs. And then we have white elephants. We thought this was going to be the new thing, but you know what? Didn't really work out. And sometimes it doesn't matter how much technology you apply, it's still a white elephant. You know, it's brand new technology, it's new and exciting to all our engineers, but the public kind of yawns and says, what else you got? All right, so they give us the list of key terms that they like to do. All right, so are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Homework? Is that, I saw in Moodle it's due until Thursday. Or I don't know if that's true.
Oh, that, when I assign homework, it's always due a week later than when I assign it. Okay? So, oh, and she is ready to go with it even before the week is up. Good on you. Let me give you back your quiz while you're here. Does anyone else have homework they'd like to turn in? All right. I should have been more diligent about preparing homework for today. I have not been. I will post that on Moodle tomorrow when I post the video.
Okay.
So do we handle this or do we submit it through Moodle?
I would actually prefer you hand them in. If you need to, go ahead and email me homework. Okay, because getting the homework out of Moodle is this whole thing that is kind of complicated. Okay, so here, the quiz for last week, and. All right, so the quizzes are always gonna be about what we have done recently. It's rarely gonna be anything where you're like, oh my God, this bald guy is killing me.
And is it gonna be like every Tuesday, every Thursday?
Yeah, every Thursday, we should have a quiz.
Okay.
If I forget to make one, what I do is base your quiz grade on whether you were here or not.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing y'all on Thursday.
Okay.
Close that. Close tabs.